On today's episode, we're speaking to Caleb Ralston, the guy behind the explosive brand growth of Gary Vee and Alex Hormozi. He's helped take their audiences from millions to tens of millions, and today he's pulling back the curtain on how it's really done. We're talking about how to start building your brand from scratch, who your first hire should be, the most common mistakes people make, and the not so obvious tactics that actually move the needle when it comes to personal branding. Let's dive in. Caleb, thanks so much for jumping on the podcast.
I appreciate you having me.
I'm very excited. I've been following your journey for a while, and have been looking forward to this conversation. In fact, a couple of team members on our agency side, they're like, "Caleb is coming on the podcast. Can you make sure you ask this question?" So a lot of people are excited. First question I have is, what's the most common piece of advice in the personal brand space that drives you absolutely nuts?
Niching down.
Tell me why.
So it's like a lot of things in life. In a vacuum, it is the right thing to do. In theory, it is exactly what you want to do to grow your brand online is niche down, because then your audience can predict what's coming next. And if they like that shit, they will follow for more. And this is how you grow the fastest on any platform: YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, all of them, right? The problem that I find is just like doing Chris Bumstead's workout program is definitely probably the best way that you can grow a really large physique. C-Bum, very big bodybuilder for those of you that don't know. You could replace him with Ronnie Coleman if you want. If I do that, I'm not going to be able to stick with the sport for very long, and I will injure myself, right? Because my body is not made for that. I haven't developed those muscles. I believe that niching down is very similar. I think there is a 0.01% of the population that could live their whole entire life talking about one thing only, and they'd be fine. They wouldn't ever get bored. They wouldn't ever, lose fulfillment. And the people around them would be like, all right, that's just how Johnny or Sarah operate. All right, cool, whatever. But for the majority of us, if we talk about the same thing only, always, forever, we're going to lose our minds. We're going to hate our own shit, and we're going to hate how we sound. We're going to get bored. I can't tell you how many different people, big creators, that people that are listening to us right now or watching us, they consume their content and they hate what they are making. They've built a prison. And so I'm all about defining what your desired outcome is. So if somebody's like, I want to make my bag in 2 years, okay, cool. Take that approach. You don't want to listen to me because I have nothing for you. I like to work with people that are building this for the long term. Just like health, fitness, working out, like you get the returns from that by doing it forever. If you only do it for a year and then you go back to eating like shit, that year was a waste, right? I believe the same for content. We want to build a system that allows the creator to do this for the long term. And I believe, based on observation across many different niches, if you niche down too much, you eventually get to the point where you hate your own shit and then you quit. And so you're not getting the actual results that you should be getting.
Interesting. So you're saying that's a problem for the creator, but is that also a problem for the consumer or not really?
It's a great question. I think what ends up happening typically is, in the spirit of wanting to niche down and continue to hammer the same thing over and over, you don't evolve as a creator. And so yes, audience fatigue does occur. I believe that, there's a million different creators out there. So I, as a consumer, sure, I can go to other creators for scratching other itches that I have as a consumer. But I think it comes down to the psychology of the creator. And not only do they only talk about the same thing, typically these same individuals don't evolve when the platforms evolve. They're the creators that are still doing daily vlogs that cover every single thing they do in a day. And they've been doing that since 2014, and they're still doing it today. When they used to get 200,000 views, now they're getting like 2,000 views. And so I think, again, in theory, your audience isn't going to get fatigued before you do. Definitely. You will get tired of it before your audience does. But if you get tired of it and then act on that, we're fucked. We're not making the content anymore. And so again, I don't know where you're going to go throughout this whole interview, but a consistent theme that I preach is sustainability, something that you can do for the long term, not maximizing a 1-year return and then quitting on month 13.
I definitely wanted to talk about the short term versus the sustainable long term approach, but I mean, we're talking about it now. So what is your approach? Is it that, hey, I'm a content creator. Let's say I'm going to think about myself, right? Like we talk about a specific niche in B2B marketing. Are you saying, no, go broad to B2B marketing? No, go broad to marketing. Or are you saying, hey, have that niche, but have these other elements to it as well? What is the approach that you suggest?
I'm going to give you a really shitty answer, which is you have to reverse engineer yourself. So some people need more or less variety than others. So for me, I'll use myself as an example here. I love a lot of things outside of brand strategy, organic content, paid media, and team building. Those are the things that I am probably most known for the 5 people that know who I am. That's what I'm known as. But I have a lot of interests outside of that. Now, does that mean that on my YouTube channel next month, I'm going to upload a video breaking down the build out that I did with my Harley Davidson Road King special? Fuck no. Because like the majority of the audience isn't going to give a shit about that. What it means for me is the video that we released last month back in May. It was a video where I was talking about content creation and kind of how you go about doing that in a way that makes it enjoyable. But I did it over the course of a motorcycle trip. Okay. And so these are different ways. I'm always looking for how do we inject things back to being a brand guy? How do we pair things we enjoy with something maybe that's new and we don't enjoy yet, content creation, in order to brand it as something that we look forward to, not that we get anxiety when we see on the calendar that it's coming up. Right. And so like, that's how I think about it. So for some people, that might mean like maybe you love marketing, right? B2B marketing, but you also have a background in sales. And so you get to speak in a unique frame on the intersection of B2B sales and B2B marketing and how they can actually be a beautiful marriage, not, a quarreling couple all the time, as an example. And so I think a lot of people misunderstand it and think like a certain portion of my content needs to be all centered around these things. Like my hat right here. It says Ralston. It's not my official logo. And I'm not going to make a video talking about black metal or hardcore, but I'm injecting little elements of who I am every time that I can. And this helps me feel like I'm not going to want to give up right away. Does that make sense? Like I'm trying to integrate more of who I am. And ultimately it's because I want more at bats for you to connect with me. You might not like metal, but maybe you like motorcycles, or maybe you like, the beverages that I drink. I love Liquid Death. I love sparkling water. I'm obsessed with all these different kinds. Maybe you connect with me on that level. And so I'm always trying to think, one, how do I make this something that I want to do longer? AKA, how do I enjoy this? And two, how do I give the audience multiple reasons to connect with me, not just one?
You've worked with Gary Vee, Layla, and Alex Hormozy. Question that I have on the back of that is, what's one thing most people assume about them and their brand and the brand building that they've done that's totally off?
That these people were 100% where they are right now as far as comfort on camera the day they started. And that's just not true.
Tell me more about that.
I would just say, like, I think people use these things as an excuse not to do. So I think people are like, oh, they've had so much success with it, but they're just naturally good on camera. It's like, no, that's actually not true. Gary is a little bit of a different example because that dude is just like a wacky, he's a mutant, right? But the majority of people that I've worked for and clients of ours now, like there is a process of becoming comfortable on camera, and that is okay. And I think a lot of people don't share that as much. I would argue Layla has shared it a lot and given a lot of people permission to be able to go through the period of time where you do suck on camera, where you do feel a little bit more robotic, where you do feel like it's not authentic to who you are. Maybe you're at the stage listening to this right now or watching that, like every video that's on your YouTube channel, everything that you post on Instagram, maybe you cringe when you see it. And I think people need to know that, like, a lot of the top creators go through that phase. The majority of people they idolize or look up to in the content creation space, they have a huge like real estate of scrolling on their Instagram feed or their YouTube channel of content that they absolutely detest. But you have to go through that in order to get to the point where you're making stuff that you're proud of.
Let's say someone is thinking of starting to work on their personal brand from scratch. Where do they start?
Well, the average person would say, start making content and posting. And I love the bias towards action. But I think one thing that a lot of people don't do is they don't figure out why are they doing this. And I think this will shock you potentially and people listening who know my background. I think if a lot of people did this exercise, a good portion of people would recognize maybe this isn't the right move for them. Maybe building and amplifying your personal brand via organic content isn't the right move. I don't think it's right for everybody. I really don't. And so what I would recommend people do is I have a framework I call the brand journey framework. And I would encourage everyone listening or watching, please answer these questions for yourself. The first question is, what do I want to have happen? What's the outcome on the other end of building this personal brand that I want to have happen? Then the next question takes us closer from the end to today. And we're working our way towards today. The next question is, what would I have to be known for in order for that to happen? The outcome I desire, what do I need to be known for that to occur? Then the third question is, in order to be known for that thing, what would I have to do? We only get known for things based on our actions. So what is it that I have to do? And then the final question, it's very simple. It takes us to today. What do I have to learn in order to do the things, to be known for the thing, to get the outcome I desire? And I can't tell you how many different people we put out like a really big course on YouTube, 6 hours, completely for free. In the workbook, I shared this framework that so many people have DM'd me, emailed me, texted me about, saying how much clarity this provided. Because what they were doing before is just yelling. Literally, it's like walking outside of your house right now and just yelling nonsense. That's literally what 99% of people making content are doing. They're just going out and yelling nonsense. They don't even know why they're communicating to people. Are you trying to get them to come to your house for like a barbecue? Do you have an event down the road? Do you have like water that you're handing out to people? Are you selling lemonade? Like, what the fuck are we doing here? And so I think a lot of people probably resonate with this, which is like, there's this feeling of like, okay, we're making content and maybe you're getting views, but it's like, what are we doing here? And what is this laddering up to? And even more importantly, if you're at the level where you have a team that's making your content, you better fucking for sure know what you're trying to accomplish. Otherwise, they have nothing they're aiming towards. So they're just spraying. It's the shotgun method, right? They're just like shooting everywhere. In Alice in Wonderland, and I got this analogy, the name incorrect. So I'm going to say it how I say it, and I know somebody will recognize that this is wrong. But I believe it's Chester the cat. I know it's like a different name or whatever. But Alice is walking down this path, and she comes up to a Y in the road. There's a split. There's two directions she can go. And there's a cat in the tree. I thought his name was Chester. And she says, what direction should I go? And the cat responds with, well, where are you trying to end up, essentially? And she goes, I'm not sure. He goes, well, then either way, we'll take you there. I would rather build my brand with clarity of where I'm trying to go. Sure, you're going to adapt it and change over time, but I want an end destination that I'm working towards that I can calibrate and grade my actions off of rather than just wandering in the dark.
Can you share an example of somebody who has come in with, I need to create content, and then they've realized that that's not the path, and you know, where did that journey kind of take them?
That was me up until 3 or 4 months ago. I was sitting behind the fucking camera and the desktop here, editing content from a man who's constantly telling you about how you need to make content. Content is the gateway to the life you want, right? Like, I have a terrible Gary impersonation, by the way, but I'm editing all day long this man talking about how you should be documenting and sharing your thoughts online, and it's going to lead to the life that you want. But yet I kept coming to terms with like, this is not my season. This is not my time to do it, right? It would not have benefited me because it would have taken me too far away from the execution of where I was at. I didn't have the resources to be able to hire a team like I do now, right? And so it would have been me doing it all myself. And I would have been deploying time and resources towards amplifying a less strong foundation of a brand. Meaning I got greater return putting my time towards the people I was working for than building my own brand at the time. And I would argue a lot of business owners in their early stages might actually be there. Now, some business models, they're contingent upon a front-facing brand. They need inbound, cool, whatever. But I think a lot of individuals, either in their career coming up or in the business, have more building to do of their foundation that they can then amplify. If I would have started being public with my thoughts in 2015 before I moved to New York, I'd have far less traction with my content than I do starting in 2025. Does that make sense?
Do you think there is an element of experience in there? Just like you need to go through crap and just muddle through that to be able to create better content?
Yes, but we're also now getting into a territory that I also don't love, which is telling people what they should do. So what I would say is like, to a certain level, yes. I think there are some people that it makes sense to document and create content on your process of learning. And you can be almost like the conduit, or you can be a proxy for people. And you can go through the trials and tribulations of learning a new skill, building a new business. You can share it with the world. This is what I've done that worked. This is what I've done that didn't work. This is what I'm learning right now. you can kind of be like the gateway to the learning for your audience. I think that is great. But if you want to make content from a place of authority, you should have something to back that authority. You should have proof to be able to fall back on. So I don't have a problem with people making content early on in the stage of not being an expert, but learning towards the expert. The key is to not sound like an expert or try to position yourself like an expert, like all of these fucking kids in their parents' basement on TikTok talking about financial advice right now. They don't know fucking dick shit, but they talk like they do, right? What they should do is share, I've read these 20 pages on this article and I uploaded them to ChatGPT, summarized it, and this is what I've pulled. I'm going to try it for the next 6 months and I'll update you every day on how it goes. That's the frame that they should take, but they're taking an authoritative frame that they don't have validity on. And my answer is more trying to provide a frame for the individuals listening or watching on how they can think about it for themselves.
We talked about kind of where to start. You've talked about kind of business owners really going through the brand journey framework, which, by the way, if we'll get a copy and put, is this public, the brand framework journey?
It is completely for free. You just have to
we'll put it in the show notes
on the course. Yeah, if you click the link in the course description on YouTube, you can download it for free.
We'll definitely do that. Let's say they've gone through that and they've said, hey, yep, the right thing for me to do is to create content. What's the first hire?
Ooh, love that question. So the best piece of advice that Gary gave me when I moved on to build other things was don't build what you saw me build here. Reverse engineer anyone you work for or work with and build the team and systems and operation around that. So there is no, this is your first hire. Because for some of you, you're going to identify making content's the right move, but maybe video sounds awful and you're not going to do video and you're going to do written. Well, hiring a videographer would be completely pointless then. So what you want to do, in my opinion, is you've identified why you're doing this, what outcome you desire. You know what you need to be known for, you know what you need to do, and you know what you need to learn. All right, cool. Let's start. You're going to start making content and immediately you're going to expose a bottleneck, a constraint. For example, let's say I am on my own. I have a content director, Trevor Odom. He's awesome. But let's say it's just me doing it myself. And I have identified YouTube's my number one priority. And I come up with all these ideas and I have all these ideas. Now I've created the outlines for all the ideas. And then I set up my camera and I film them all. And I'm like, I have no problem making the ideas. I have no problem filming the ideas. But shit, I can't seem to edit these for my life. I have 5 videos now that are banked. The constraint is editing. So that's what you're going to hire first. What I want people to do is start making the content and let the process reveal the problem and then hire the solution to the problem. Any hire you make, and this is for any department, it should only be a hire if you're solving a problem you've identified exists. If you're just checking a box, what you're doing is you're creating a future problem on your team. Someone who does not have clarity around why they're there. There's no clear KPIs that they're laddering up to. And essentially what you're doing is you're telling yourself, I'm going to have to fire this person down the road. And that fucking sucks. I have had to do that. And it is the worst. I would avoid it like the plague. It's unavoidable. But as much as you can, I would encourage you to do that. So the first hire needs to be deconstraining your current process. And that in perpetuity. That's how you build the team, is then that person comes in and it's like, okay, cool. Now we're editing the videos. But now I realize now that we're editing, I'm still producing a ton of ideas, but man, I can't fucking film these all by myself. So then a videographer, right? And so on and so forth. Then all of a sudden you start realizing we have no problem putting out long form videos, but our short form game is lacking in output, short form editor. Or, hey, we're doing great on video, but I got D's in English class. So I am terrible at writing and can't seem to get anything out. I need help with taking my verbal and turning it into written. So then you hire that.
The question that I had in the back of this was, are there certain roles or kind of responsibilities that are not intuitive to people? You know, like the videographer, yeah, makes sense. Editor makes sense. Are there certain role and responsibilities that, you know, you've turned to some of your clients and you're like, we need to hire for this, and they're like, didn't realize that's a thing? Or is that it ever come up?
I'll give you 2 answers, one that's wide, one that's super niche. Okay. Why? Ideas person. I could make the argument that 99%, but let's just, play it conservative here. 90% of your success in content is not having anything to do with production or post-production. It's all pre-production. it's the idea. So for a lot of our clients, that's something that I'm working on, whether they can hire them full-time or they are hiring somebody as a contractor and their only role is researching and developing ideas backed by data, not just like a fucking, I thought this was a good idea in a corner. Like, no, I can validate that this will work. That's something for a wide spectrum. Now, a very select few clients that are really big brands, really big public personas that have a lot of footage being captured, years worth, and terabytes upon terabytes that they're producing, a data manager. Somebody who's full-time, and this is the hardest one to sell for anyone ever, always. It's somebody whose full-time job is to tag the footage and media and organize it for long-term access. Again, if this is a really big personal brand, a big public persona, there's a world where content will be made about their career down the road, right? HBO might want to do a documentary on this entrepreneur or whatever. I want a system where anybody that wants to make content, even if I move on from the team and 10 years down the road, they want access to it, they can find shit from 2022 easily, not in a very difficult way. That is the hardest sell because you don't see any output.
For 10 years.
Ever. It's brutal. Now, real quick here for everyone that has been like, but, while I'm saying this, yes, AI is going to solve this 100%. It's getting really close. I do not believe that there is a foolproof AI data asset manager out there that removes the human completely and is actually accurate. But we're getting there. So for those that are listening to this June 3rd, 2025, when this is being recorded, cool. You might need a human. In a year, you might need a human to build the system and then it can run on its own. Being able to, look at Gary, for example. The amount of times that he recalls a clip from years ago where he predicted something and it came true. Those are incredibly powerful moments for his brand, right?
Yeah, I've seen those clips, but you don't realize how hard it is to get that clip, to make that happen, right? Because you gotta have that system of documentation of like easily being able to link this. Because if he I don't know how pieces of content he's putting out, but it's not a small amount. It would be just lost in the sea of content.
And something that I want to be clear and vulnerable about. What I have just described to you is the best case scenario. I've never built it out to that level for anyone I've ever worked for, ever. It is what I would like, but still to this day have not on that extreme, dialed back versions for sure, but on that extreme, I have not gotten that to have happen. But that is the best case scenario. I promise you. And every single person that I've tried to sell it on that didn't do it, they will regret it in 20 years.
I want to talk a little bit about the tactics that people use when it comes to personal branding to get traction.
Okay.
One of the things that I hear or I see quite a lot is the pick an enemy strategy, right? When does that work? When does it backfire?
I think it always works, done correctly.
Maybe actually, before we do that, can you describe what your definition of pick an enemy is for the audience?
I haven't ever sat down and defined it, so I can't give you, I don't think I would do it justice without putting more thought into it. I always try to be very careful when I'm like defining something. But what I would say is I will articulate it.
Let's loosely define it.
Yeah, we're going to word vomit here for a little bit. I'm a verbal processor. But when done incorrectly, I think it's when you pick an individual as an enemy and you target them. I think when done correctly, you pick an ideal or an idea and you make that an enemy. So for me, for example, we opened this with niching down. Another one that I would deem an idea or concept that I've made an enemy of mine is that views are the number one thing that we want to maximize for in building our personal brand. Those are two things that 99% of my competitors, individuals like me online that talk about this shit, they push that. They push niching down and they push optimizing around views. I have never once in a video or an interview ever mentioned a personal name. I could give you 10 right now, but I'm not going to. I'm coming against the idea. I do think there are unique circumstances when you have like a Wendy's, right, that trolls other brands on Twitter, for example. They've done that well, right? You've had times in in advertising when McDonald's and Burger King were a little bit more direct with each other. But I would actually argue that 99.9% of the time, when you see a brand, individual or like a company brand, pick at somebody else, what that signals, not to the everyday layperson, but anyone who knows, immediately goes, oh, they've identified themselves as at top number two. Nobody in the number one slot picks an actual individual, right? And so I don't like this strategy, but what I will share, something that does work, is when you're coming up, you can do that. You can take brands and you can actually call out their name and say, this is why they're doing X wrong, blah, blah, blah. I don't like it though, because you build a brand around you shitting on people. There's a very well-known individual in the fitness space that I personally have only had good interactions with. I really like him. I interviewed him back when I was in high school. He's built his brand over the last couple of years around calling people out by name and shitting on what they have to say and then correcting them. He gets a lot of views. I do think that there is a world where calling out bullshit is good. Like Derek, more plates, more dates, he calls out bullshit. I like that. There's other individuals that are a little bit more aggressive about it. And I just think that there is an icky feeling whenever people talk about you behind the scenes. Because I promise you, every time that name gets brought up, I hear a lot of opinions from a lot of people on it. So that's not the brand that I want, right? Some people believe all press is good press. I think those people are fundamentally wrong and haven't let this play out long enough. But yeah, it's just my opinion on that. I don't like that approach, but I will say it is effective in garnering attention. Now, is it the kind of attention you want? That's up for, the people listening or watching to determine. Again, I don't like tactics as much as I like giving principles and frames for people to determine what's best for them. Because the worst thing in the world is to look at these creators and be like, I'm going to do it their way. That is the worst way to approach this. Working our way towards that, sure. I believe picking an enemy is done best when you pick an ideology, a trope, right? Like a business trope, a content trope, something that people preach as gospel that you fundamentally disagree with.
Do you call picking an enemy a tactic? Is that a tactic, or is that a strategic approach? But basically, the question that I want to ask is, what are maybe the other two at the top of your list type of strategies or tactics or frameworks for creating content that works really well?
If you're in the education space selling a service, for example, a big one is it's a tale as old as time, but just updating it to a 2025 version of it, case studies. People do a really good job right now of dissecting what Nike did for their campaign and how it was brilliant. Guess what? I could give a fuck about what those people have to say on the next topic. I don't care. If it comes up in my feed, I might find it interesting, so I'll watch it. But I don't care about that person's take because they're not in the trenches. I don't know if what they just said is true. They weren't on the back end of it, right? Like even people that I have worked for, when we would do like something was trending around a company and we would film a hot take, I always felt weird about it because I was like, even you at the intelligence level and context you have no idea what the decisions were on the back end, right? Like a big one that everyone did, and I'm insane for even mentioning this, but like everyone gave their opinions and theories on the Bud Light campaign. Not one of those people were in the room. Nobody was in the room, right? And that's on a failure, but on a success. Like people do this all the time. Spotify rolls out some new feature and things are going great. And somebody breaks down how this is a genius market. And it's like, I would rather you share less impressive numbers, but results you've gotten that were positive for clients you have, because I am now likely to believe that you can do it, right? Like it's the same thing. Any creative nerds are going to lose their mind hearing this because they'll relate. It's like the fucking asshole who dissects a film when you watch it and talks about how terrible the lighting was, or the acting was horrible, or the cinematography was like, meh. But they've never made a fucking video in their life. They can rip things apart, but they can't actually do. And I think right now we're living in a world where so many people are commentating on what other people are doing. And they're showing that like, yeah, you're a good, like Charles Barkley can really break down a basketball game now really well. But get Charles Barkley out on the court now? Nah, not going to look the same, right? Slightly bad example because in his past life, he was great. But we have all these people that are pontificating and giving their opinions on these things, and that's fine. But I think if you want to actually stand out, even if it's less impressive, show results that you've got. That would be the biggest one that I would say, because ultimately what you're doing is you're training and teaching your audience to trust you. Because what's going to happen is you share the success you've gotten for clients and you share the takeaways. You don't save it behind a paywall. You share exactly what the audience could do to get similar results in their own context. And then eventually when they hear you enough, they trust you on that. And so they go from passively consuming to actively consuming. They take action on what you share. And when they take action on what you share, if you're good, they're going to get the result. And then they no longer associate you with success outcomes. They associate you with their success outcomes. And so when you make them aware of an offer you have, for example, they believe far more that they are going to get in greater return than what they invested in you, right? So like if I pay for this offer that you're making me aware of, I'm going to get so much more in return than what I invest because I have multiple instances from the free content where the same thing has occurred.
I want to come to the point that you talked about. Views are overrated. Break that down for me.
Views are unbelievably important, and impressions are the number one thing I encourage people to track. But if your psychology and frame is that it's views above everything, then you're going to go down a really disgusting rabbit hole and waste a lot of money. What I mean by this is if you are a business selling something and you need to sell that thing in order to stay in business, but you maximize your organic content strategy around views and subscribers, not around conversions on your offer, you may gain extreme success on the platform and go out of business. Because what you're going to get is signal from the platform that yes, this video, more topics like this, right? If you're a finance guy, so this was a huge one that I saw, and I'm not going to name any names again, but there was a lot of people that did this, that were in the finance space or business development content space. And when 2020 came around, they uploaded a fucking video talking about their views on the vaccine because they knew it was going to get a lot of views and engagement. Guess what? Anybody who saw that for the first time and subscribed to you is going to want more of. Those opinions, those things, right? And so what ends up happening, I've seen this a million times. I've worked for people that have made this mistake, is you follow what you think is signal, but actually noise that these platforms give you. And so you're maximizing for more views every month. But have you checked to see if those people are converting on your offer? Because if not, eventually you're going to get to a point where the bank account's running dry. And that is tons of views. And you and I both know that all of our bills, all of those different, entities, they take views as a form of currency. And so it's a wonderful thing. Of course not. You can't fucking pay for shit with views. So what I encourage people to do is to track and get some sort of, and I know every level that you go down in greenness and new to entrepreneurship, it becomes harder. It's more expensive to track from organic to conversion. So you need your best version. I'm in my second quarter of being in business. I don't have some like super complex, UTM tracking system where I'm No, what I'm doing is when I hop on a call with a lead, I ask them, what was the piece of content that you consumed that made you want to reach out to me, right? So that's what I'm trying to do. And then I'm doing more of that content, not necessarily what gets the most views, because I'm not trying to become famous, right? I'm trying to build a business. And so I would really recommend you need to look at views and subscribers as a metric of success on the platform. Yes. But who are your viewers? I don't want people, I've said it, this is the second time now in a different case, but like, don't build a prison where all of a sudden you're known for this one thing and you're just making this content because it's doing better, but your business isn't doing better. In fact, I would argue it causes people's business to do worse, not neutral. So views are important. And I don't want that to get lost. I care about views a lot. I do not care about views as the only thing that matters.
So you're saying make sure you track your audience, who they are, who is viewing your content, but also have some sort of a mechanism that gives you feedback loop towards the end, maybe at the sales call, maybe at the conversion point, to kind of capture that feedback to make sure that they're the right people. Is that that's okay?
Absolutely. And like, I'll give you one here. We're still in the learning phases of what our audience wants to see more of from me. So we're still in the testing phase. There's a video that's going to, like today's Tuesday, June 3rd. There's a video that's going to drop on Friday, June 6th. And it's a 2-hour video on how to lead a media team. that is a very small TAM, right? Like the video we released
that's
last
very
month,
niche.
extremely. Last month, I did a video where I'm talking about overcoming issues with making content. Like if you're struggling to make content, watch this, right? That is a lot of people, right? I didn't get any qualified leads, like strong qualified leads from that video on our client side. Now, I have two things I'm searching for. I'm searching for clients, but also people to hire for our clients. I got a lot of those. So it was still a W. But this next video, I'm going to look. We don't have a UTM in place, but I'm going to look at the people that DM me and say, dude, I love the last video. What caliber of individual are they? The people that submit to become a partner with us and work with us in the next year. What kind of level of brands are coming through? Is it a bunch of noobs or is it more established individuals? I'm looking at that, and I would argue, I bet this video on Friday will be the lowest performer out of, this will be our fourth video that we publish. I bet it will be our lowest performer. I could be wrong. I always like to sandbag my predictions, but I think it'll be the lowest performer. But I think other than the course, it will be the second biggest driver of qualified leads for us. And so I will want to do more of that, even at the detriment to my ego of putting out content that doesn't get as many views.
We work with a lot of B2B companies, and there's a lot of companies in the B2B space that still use the traditional kind of content strategy for their organization. The white papers and the webinars and the reports, and let me just push these out and get some audience. What is your advice for shifting to a more modern approach? The short forms, the video content, or even written content, micro content. What is your advice to some of these companies going through the old playbook when it comes to content and brand building?
I think that white papers are actually phenomenal. I think that the majority of people actually just don't put relevant and interesting or useful information on them. But like, here I am about to commentate on a brand doing something that I'm not on the back end, so I don't know how it's actually playing out. But from an outside perspective, I think Neil Patel's strategy of releasing all of these breakdowns that have his logo on it, that people download and put into their presentation for their entire executive team to see, is brilliant. As a side note, I just think that the majority of people aren't thinking the way he is in putting out relevant information that people care about in 2025. They're putting out bullshit from fucking forever ago. So I do think that there is an opportunity there. And I do like that strategy when done correctly. But yeah, I think the biggest one, man, is people making the mistake of thinking that they need to build up this business brand as like this faceless entity. But I would actually argue a lot of people would gain more success out of taking the uncomfy move and building out the personal brands of individuals on your team and utilizing that in order to go out and do your business. I guarantee if the decision maker at X company that you're targeting knows who your salesperson is and has seen them and has an affinity towards them, that process will go differently, right? Just like none of our clients have been outbound. Everything's been inbound. They already know a little bit about me. They like all of it. And that's why we've been able to have the success that we've had so far. And my hope is to always be that way, right? But I think that you can do it. You know, a lot of people think of it from the CEO founder level. I believe the best version of an organization is you are the machine that builds personal brands. And so people come there, you build their personal brand and they're edified. They're able to do a better job on whatever role they have in the company, if it's front facing, like customer client facing. Mm-hmm. And then, yes, you run the risk of individuals are going to go off and do their own thing. Cool. You have a machine, build the next one. I think that's the most effective strategy, but people aren't willing to do it because they're afraid that then they're going to lose the talent. Whereas like if you've consumed any of my content that I'm making or the podcast interviews that I'm doing, I even mentioned it here and you haven't asked me about him. I'm trying to promote Trevor Odom, my content director, as much as possible. When he came to me and said, I want to make a bet on you and be your content guy, I told him, cool. It's going to be my goal this next year to make your brand bigger than it's ever been before. He could go off and he's getting DMs from people wanting him for good reason. People should try to get Trevor. He is incredible. I just believe that I'm breeding more loyalty with him by doing this rather than trying to do this.
Do you have examples of people who've done this at large scale? It becomes even harder to build that loyalty at large scale because there's a certain point that the churn becomes higher than what you could build, right? It takes time to build the personality, a personal brand, and so on and so forth. Have you seen large organizations do? Yeah.
I don't think so. I think the majority of people have no desire to do their own thing. And if you do a good job of creating an environment where it's always a bigger opportunity, I think even the real gangsters, a lot of them only leave when the opportunity no longer services their end goal. And so I think if you can continue to make a bigger opportunity, I don't think you deal with that churn problem as much as a lot of people anticipate. So as a side note there, now you're going to have that for sure. I don't have a good B2B example for you that I can share. But what I would say on a publisher standpoint, and this is the example I use for a lot of B2B clients when I'm selling them on this, is essentially you take a barstool approach.
Tell me more about that.
Dave Portnoy isn't the one in all of the content. In fact, I would argue a lot of the hosts of his show are becoming, or his shows are becoming more famous than him. And so what I would recommend people do, here's another example. A lot of people that are doing it right now where their founder or CEO is the only public facing figure, they're setting up terrible expectations on what the engagement is going to be in the B2B relationship. They're not branding other people on the team. They're not branding Brandy, who is the CMO that you're going to meet with, right? Like they only think they're coming in. This used to be a thing at Vayner, right? Like Gary would always talk about it. Like you're not working with Gary, you're working with VaynerMedia, right? But if you don't show VaynerMedia, then people don't know that and they don't set up the proper expectations. So I believe that it helps in the sales process because you have more trust. Literally, if somebody recognizes somebody, trust is increased. So just scale that up from there. Number two is I think that you actually have more buy-in. So if people have no idea, if I meet with clients and Trevor hops on a call and I've never framed him or given him any sort of awareness around who he is, not as impressive as if he is somebody that they have consumed his content. They know how much of a gangster he is. When he hops on a call, I don't have to sell them on why they should listen. Or worse yet, he says something and then I have to repeat it for them to take it seriously. They immediately, all of our clients take Trevor very seriously. And that's without him even making content. We're working on that. We're getting there. But that's a little bit of a process. But that's the way that I think about it, man. Like it's the same way that you think about it from the top end. And you can take all those same benefits and apply it down at the employee level.
Okay, let's do some rapid fire questions before we wrap up.
I'm going to do my best.
So let's try to keep these to one sentence. First question is,
I'm so for both.
First question. What is one resource? This could be a book, a blog, a podcast, a talk, whatever it is. One resource that has had a fundamental impact on the way you work or live.
I mean, there's so many, but I'll just say for
First thing comes to mind.
Crush It. Gary's first book. It's what caused me to do what I'm doing now.
Who are some of the, and I know you don't like the word thought leaders or influencers, but who are some of the people in your space that you follow closely and you listen to? Again, the first 2-3 names that come to mind.
I'm going to give you a weird answer here. There's no specific names because if I were to give the names, I think people would probably put too much weight into what they're saying. Myself included, there's not a single person out there that is going to give you the better advice or answer to these problems and questions than you being in the weeds and doing it yourself. So I probably sound like an asshole right now. I'd say like the Garys of the world. I look more at consumer behavior than creators is how I will articulate it. So instead of looking to like a guru in the space, I look at the work they do and how it's responded to by the audience as my learning. More so. I'm giving you such a long answer, dude. I'm sorry, but I do have to give one little piece. I will go for very specific advice from individuals. So like Patty Galloway, for example, I love consuming when he does an interview to hear how he's thinking about optimizing YouTube content for entertainment purposes. Does that make sense? Like I'm not necessarily looking at him from like brand strategy, but I'm taking what I think he is like world-class and competitively great at and extracting that little piece and then figuring out how does this go into my philosophy and my niche or my clientele.
If you could give one advice to people who are looking at building their personal brand, what would that be?
Be 100% you and nothing else. It's not sustainable if you put on a caricature of somebody that you wish you were or want someone to think you are. You will fuck it up. You will reveal yourself and you'll create an immense amount of distrust. When people meet creators that they think they're one way online and they're a completely different way in real life, all trust is eroded completely. And you'll just end up hating yourself if you end up doing that. So I would just encourage you, be 100% you. Like those things that you think are weird quirks, bring them to the light.
Bring him out. Bring him out. Last question. What's something excites you going forward about personal branding?
That in the age of AI and everyone sounding like each other on LinkedIn, if you do what I just said and lean into who you are as a person and build and amplify your personal brand that way, you will stand out. And I actually think that we're going to go through the next 5 years where being 1,000,000% yourself, all your insecurities, the thing that you're terrified telling your partner about, that is what is going to differentiate you when everybody else is faking it and putting out ChatGPT written LinkedIn posts, which I love ChatGPT, but don't just copy and fucking paste it.
Caleb, this is an awesome conversation. Just want to say thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, dude. I really appreciate it.